Hey there, all you macabre musical maniacs. Welcome back to Broadway by Ghostlight. I'm Mark Bonanni, and this is episode 22 of Broadway Jeopardy, and today also happens to be Halloween. So I've cooked up an all-new spooky musical theme for today's 26 clues. I hope you all have some fun with it. I've got a brand new episode of Broadway Jeopardy every week, so make sure you're subscribed so you won't miss an episode. But let's crack open the coffins, break out the Ouija boards, and summon this week's game. This is Broadway Jeopardy! Taking a look at this week's categories, we start off, as always, with last week's final Jeopardy category, which is ghosts, looking at some singing specters in musicals. That's followed by The Devil Made Me Do It, dealing with the times the devil himself has appeared in various shows. Then we have Bloodsuckers. These are musicals where a character has a taste for blood. After that, it's Sweeney Todd, a whole category devoted to one of the greatest and scariest musicals of all time. And last but not least, we have Horror Show, looking at some different horror-themed musicals. And we end with the final Jeopardy round, so make sure and keep track of your scores. I actually have several Broadway props that go along with some of the clues, so I thought I'd share some with you guys today. You know how I love showing off my props. It might make for a little longer video, but hopefully it's something you guys will enjoy. And just like 2 weeks ago now, I acquired one of the greatest props in movie/fake musical history. Cryptic clue, I know, but stick around to the end. I'll share that with you. It's definitely sort of Halloween themed, so it fits in. But I just had to share this prop I acquired with you guys. I am so excited about it.
I'm excited, you're excited. Yeah!
We start with the $200 round, or the overture round as I call it, where we start off nice and easy with the difficulty level, and then the questions get scary hard towards the end. Beginning with ghosts, your first $200 clue is: this famous ghost with the most got his own musical in 2019. Just don't say the title 3 times. What is Beetlejuice? Beetlejuice the musical opened on Broadway in 2019 to mixed reviews and closed after playing a little more than a year. But the show gained a huge online sort of Gen Z fan base, and the show, true to its subject matter, had a life after death and reopened on Broadway in 2022 and played for another 9 months. Leading both the original and return engagement was Alex Brightman in the title role. His performance was lauded across the board, and Brightman even voiced the character of Beetlejuice in animation form for the DC Comics cartoon Teen Titans Go.
Lost spirits always end up in one place, the Netherworld.
That sounds simple enough. Think you can take us there?
Oh, gee, I don't know. I'm a very busy ghost. I'm doing a show on Broadway, I'm planning a trip to Hawaii, and I just got engaged to Winona Ryder.
Up next in The Devil Made Me Do It, the $200 clue is: this Golden Age musical finds Joe Boyd making a literal deal with the devil to become famous baseball player Joe Hardy. What is Damn Yankees? The classic 1955 musical was directed by George Abbott and choreographed by Bob Fosse, and starred Ray Walston as Mr. Applegate, aka the Devil, and Gwen Verdon as his reluctant minion Lola. In the original London production, a replacement Mr. Applegate was Vincent Price. That would have been a fun one to have seen. A Broadway revival in 1984 had Victor Garber and B.B. Newirth as Applegate and Lola, respectively. And legendary comedian Jerry Lewis took the role of the devil in the national tour. A revival was actually in the works several years ago now, rumored to be starring Breaking Bad star Bryan Cranston, but obviously that never came to be. I saw the national tour of Damn Yankees with Jerry Lewis, and I grew up just absolutely adoring Jerry Lewis and Martin and Lewis and the old black and white comedy bits. And I saw the show, and I actually, that red cane that he's holding, I actually now own one of the canes. And It's signed by Jerry Lewis, and this is among my most prized possession. I really love this cane. I did a whole story about it in one of my old prop table videos. You can go back in history and watch that if you want. Looking at some bloodsuckers now, your $200 clue there is this short-lived musical, based on the popular Anne Rice novel, The Vampire Chronicles, had a score by Elton John and Bernie Taupin. What is Lestat? In the hundreds and hundreds of Broadway shows I've been fortunate enough to see, I have never left a show at intermission. But Lestat is where I definitely came the closest. Sorry if you're a Lestat fan. What can I say? The musical did its pre-Broadway tryout in San Francisco, and by all accounts, there was a much better show there before it was reworked for Broadway. The musical's more than game cast included Carolee Carmello and Hugh Panaro in the title role. The cast was certainly not to blame for the musical's failure, but sadly, most people will never get to judge for themselves. An original cast recording for Lestat was made, but has never been released, despite several fan-led efforts to make it available.
Whatever happened to Lestat, I do not know.
Let's attend the tale of Sweeney Todd and the $200 clue. This is the London street where Sweeney's dastardly doings take place. What is Fleet Street? Though Fleet Street is a very real street in central London, its demon barber is probably not. Though for a time, Sweeney Todd was believed to have been a real figure in history, that's since pretty much been debunked by most scholars. The character of Sweeney Todd, the demon barber of Fleet Street, first appeared in the Penny Dreadful story A String of Pearls in 1846. The story has had many versions since then, but the musical is specifically an adaptation of the play version of Sweeney Todd by Christopher Bond from 1970. It was Bond that gave Sweeney his tragic backstory with Judge Turpin, as well as many other plot points you find now in the musical. And finishing up the overture round with a horror show, the final $200 clue is seeking revenge on those who've hurt him. The Phantom of the Opera famously sends this hurling towards the stage at the end of Act 1. What is the chandelier? The chandelier in The Phantom of the Opera is one of, if not the most famous set pieces in theater history, I'd wager. It famously drops down a little before crashing to the stage. In the Las Vegas production, the chandelier dropped straight down a good ways. It was pretty crazy to see. Also, while every production of Phantom shows the chandelier being revived in a thrilling opening scene of the musical, that Las Vegas production had the chandelier assemble from separate parts mid-air during the famous overture. It was incredible to see. I hope you all scared up a full 1,000 fake dollars with that first round. Let's move on to the only slightly harder $400 round now. Circling back to ghosts, the $400 clue is, when critics saw this otherworldly romantic musical based on the 1990 film of the same name starring Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore, it was in danger, girl. What is Ghosts the Musical? The musical started life in the West End starring Richard Fleischman and Cassie Levy, both of whom would transfer with the show to Broadway. Newcomers to the cast for the Broadway production included Bryce Pinkham as the villainous Carl and Divine Joy Randolph as Oda Mae Brown. Miss Randolph would later win the Oscar for her role in the film The Holdovers and plays Police Detective Williams on the brilliant Only Murders in the Building. But much like its leading man Sam, Ghost the Musical's life was cut pretty short, playing only about 4 months on Broadway. Looking at another Broadway Beelzebub, the $400 clue in The Devil Made Me Do It is, Elder Price has a spooky nightmare about descending into hell with an electric guitar playing devil in this smash hit 2011 musical. What is the Book of Mormon? In the musical, Elder Price leaves his mission companion, Elder Cunningham, which is strictly against the Mormon rules. This prompts him to have a reoccurring nightmare, apparently shared by all Mormons, at least in the musical, about a hell populated by lusty demons, various evil people throughout history, and sentient cups of coffee. The very funny number, titled Spooky Mormon Hell Dream, was originally titled HE Double Hockey Sticks in early readings of the show. I actually have a few of the costume pieces from Spooky Mormon Hell Dream. I have the gloves worn by the toe-tapping demons in the show, and I have one of the actual headpieces from the show. This is just on a dummy head, but it's one of the wigs and little demon horns that they wear in that number. So sort of cool. I also have two of the pitchforks, all bejeweled and bedazzled, but I'll leave those for another video. Sticking with vampires, the Bloodsucker category gives us the $400 clue. A musicalization of the most famous vampire story of all time featured a score by Frank Wildhorn, Don Black, and Christopher Hampton, and starred Melissa Errico, Kelly O'Hara, and Tom Hewitt in the title role. What is Dracula the Musical? So there's what I call the unholy trinity of vampire musicals. Lestat, Dracula, and a third musical we'll get to later on. But for my money at least, Dracula was the best one, though it's a pretty low bar. Anyways, Dracula the Musical boasted several jaw-dropping special effects, which you know I'm a sucker for. Tom Hewitt as Dracula started off as an extremely old man with makeup and prosthetics used, but after biting his victim, he came up from her neck looking like a dashing young man. It was actually a really crazy, cool effect. There was also a scene where Kelly O'Hara's nightgown instantly disappeared through the stage, leaving the actress nude. Also a very memorable effect. In order to try to extend the musical's life, family-friendly matinees were announced that would forgo the nudity by Miss O'Hara and another topless scene by Melissa Errico. Nothing could save the vampire musical from the critics' stake through the heart, though, and the musical closed after 6 months. And again, a cast recording was made for the blood-sucking show, but it has never seen the light of day. Up next for Sweeney Todd, your $400 clue is: when we first meet Mrs. Lovett, she sings this song about her shop's less than stellar offerings. What is The Worst Pies in London? Dozens of brilliant women have taken on the role of Mrs. Lovett since the musical premiered in 1979. A certain newspaper did a group interview with 8 different people who have played the perilous pie maker over the years, including Christine Baranski, Patti LuPone, Helena Bonham Carter, Leah Salonga, Sutton Foster, and Annalie Ashford. The women all agreed that Mrs. Lovett's opening song, The Worst Pies in London, is perhaps her most difficult song in the show. Sutton Foster likened it to being shot out of a cannon, while the great Patti LuPone called performing the song an out-of-body experience. I have 2 props that sort of go hand in hand with The Worst Pies in London. So I have one of the pies used in the latest 2023 revival. This is not one of the hero pies, I would say. This is probably one of her earlier pies before they get all fancy. But then Patti LuPone in the iconic 2005-2006 production of Sweeney Todd, that hat that she's wearing right there, I actually have that top hat. This is the top hat. It was first worn by Donnellan Chaplin as a certain character in the musical, it's taken by Mrs. Lovett, and it's used in promotional material for the show, and it's sort of iconic, and this is the actual one and only top hat from that production of Sweeney Todd. Wrapping up the round with the horror show category, your final $400 clue is: And Eve Was Weak and Out for Blood are songs from this flop horror musical based on the Stephen King novel of the same name, which failed to scare up any good reviews. What is Carrie? The musical starring Lindsay Hatley and Betty Buckley is the gold standard of flop musicals, thanks to the book Not Since Carrie by Ken Mandelbaum, which I've mentioned many times in these episodes, but it's an absolute must-read for any fans of musical theater. The musical also inspired another brilliant book titled Out for Blood, A Cultural History of Carrie the Musical, a fascinating look into the backstory and history of the show I definitely recommend you check out. Let's run right into the $600 round now like we're being chased by the ghost of David Merrick. Oh, jeez Louise. I produced Hello Dolly. Okay, sorry about that. In the ghosts category, your first $600 clue is a musical featuring this famous friendly ghost as the title character, premiered in London in 1999. An American version starring Cheetah Rivera ran regionally in 2001, but the show never reincarnated to New York. What is Casper the Musical? The show is not a musical version of the 1995 Bill Pullman Christina Ricci film, which I was obsessed with as a kid, but it does use a lot of the elements from the film for sure. Present were Casper's trio of uncles, Stretch, Stinky, and Fatso, and the plot involves finding a deed to the mansion occupied by the specters in order to find the greatest treasure of all, which, spoiler alert, is friendship. Anyways, as the clue mentioned, the musical first premiered in London in 1999 and then was completely overhauled for America in 2001, where it now starred the great Cheetah Rivera as villain Magdalena Monteverdi, a reality show star desperate for the treasure.
The music's steady. Okay, ghosties, quick, get ready. Put your coats on, time to start your motive for a quick departure. My neck is stiff, my back's in spasm. Come on down, you ectoplasm. Cross yourself and all that jazz. We're in the spirit now. Oh!
Looking at a different iteration of the Lord of the Underworld with The Devil Made Me Do It, your $600 clue is the title villain of this musical rules over the factory-like underworld where its denizens slave away to maintain a wall around the city. What is Hadestown? Hades rules over the electric city in the musical, surrounded by a wall built and maintained by the workers who populate it. The number, Why We Build the Wall, is a powerful, sobering look into fear-mongering that is strikingly topical, but shockingly it's merely life-imitating art. The song Why We Build the Wall was part of the show since early development in 2006, a whole 10 years before a certain someone made much ado about building a wall.
How does the wall keep us free? My children, how does the wall keep us free?
How does the wall keep us free? The wall keeps out the enemy, and we build the wall to keep us free. That's why we build the wall, we build the wall to keep us free.
Sinking our fangs into the bloodsuckers category gives us the $600 clue. In yet another ill-fated vampire musical on Broadway, this flop was based on the Roman Polanski film The Fearless Vampire Killers and starred Michael Crawford. What is Dance of the Vampires, the other member of the unholy trinity of vampire musicals? The musical was a massive hit in Austria and Germany titled Tanz der Vampir, but producers took the serious and sexy gothic musical and Americanized it, making it very corny. When Michael Crawford's Count Otto van Krolak made his first appearance in the musical after a young woman says, "Oh God," he says, "God has left the building." And, you know, watching the musical, I'm sure he did, along with a good portion of the audience.
Oh, snap!
The show featured a legendary number, not in the good legendary way, the other kind of legendary way, a number called Garlic, with lyrics like, Garlic, garlic, the secret of staying young. Garlic, garlic, that's why we're so well hung. Yeah, and among my many prized theater possessions is an actual strand of garlic from that number in that show. I mean, this is like flop musical prop holy grail material right here. An actual strand of garlic from Dance of the Vampires. One of my most prized possessions. Swing your razors high for Sweeney Todd. This $600 clue is: this brash character is the first person to meet the business end of Sweeney's razor. Who is Adolfo Pierelli? Pierelli is a rival barber and snake oil salesman. Actually, what he sells is a lot worse than snake oil.
Wanna buy a bottle?
What is this?
What is this?
Smells like piss.
Smells like piss.
Looks like piss. This is piss. Piss with ink.
But speaking of that clip I just played a little bit before, Sweeney was referring to Pirelli's Miracle Elixir. And at the last Broadway flea market, I splurged on this item here. This is a prop bottle of Pirelli's Miracle Elixir from the last 2023 revival of the show. It's actually not liquid at all inside. It's fully solid plastic. But it's just such a cool, beautiful looking prop there.
True, set, true.
And in the horror show category, the $600 clue is: set in a possessed cabin in the woods. This off-Broadway musical, based on the beloved Sam Raimi horror film franchise, had audiences do the Necronomicon in 2006. What is Evil Dead the musical? The show opened at New World Stages here in New York on November 1st, 2006, starring Ryan Ward as Ash, Jenna Coker as Cheryl, and Daryl Winslow as good old reliable Jake. I saw, I guess, what had to be the final preview of the show, which happened to be a midnight performance on Halloween. It was epic. Everyone was dressed up. There were many Ashes from Evil Dead in the audience, and they would all shout the famous lines along with the actors, which I know sounds annoying, but it was actually really fun. I still have my foam finger, my foam chainsaw hand from the show. Also random, but on the topic of Evil Dead the musical, look at these promotional posters for, I think it's the Canadian production of the show. I would kill to have these in real life. No pun intended, I guess. It's time to really turn the screws with the $800 round.
You've done this before.
But if you could hit that little like button for me like it's giving out candy, that would really help me out. It really helps with the truly terrifying YouTube algorithm and showing these videos to more fine ghouls like yourselves, but also makes me feel like I've got at least
a little brains, a little talent, with an emphasis on the latter.
Scaring up the $800 clue in the ghost category, we have on Broadway. This spooky, short-lived Andrew Lloyd Webber musical starred Michael Ball, Maria Friedman, and a live rat named Beatrice. What is The Woman in White? The musical opened in London in 2004, starring Maria Friedman, the very same woman who directed the lauded Merrily We Roll Along revival, and Michael Crawford as the wicked Count Fosco. On Broadway, though, Michael Ball, who had taken over the role in London from an ailing Michael Crawford, opened the show along with Friedman reprising her role. As for Beatrice, the live rodent was the pet of Count Fosco and would crawl from arm to arm on the actor during one of his songs. Let's ride our broomsticks to England with The Devil Made Me Do It and the $800 clue. This West End musical sees three small-town women under the spell of the devilish Daryl Van Horn, who unlocks the witchy powers within them. What is The Witches of Eastwick? The Witches of Eastwick is based on the 1984 John Updike novel, the same one which spawned the 1987 film starring Jack Nicholson as the devilish Daryl and Michelle Pfeiffer, Susan Sarandon, and Cher as the witchy trio of women under his spell. The musical's original London cast consisted of Joanna Riding, Maria Friedman again, and Lucy Arnaz as the powerful women, and Ian McShane as Daryl Van Horn. The musical got pretty decent reviews and had many fervent fans, so it's pretty surprising that the show has never played Broadway. Maybe someday.
Once upon a time, a little girl looked to the sky and dreamed a dream all children dream and wished that she could fly.
I never dreamt that.
Looking at some non-vampire bloodsuckers with the $800 clue. In Little Shop of Horrors, the sadistic dentist is the first body fed to the carnivorous Audrey 2, but this person was the second victim to become plant food. Who is Mr. Mushnick is the correct answer. Mr. Mushnick witnesses Seymour chopping up the body of the no-good dentist and wants him to turn himself into the police. But Seymour turns Mr. Mushnick into plant food instead. It's a kind of brutal thing to do to that man that Seymour looked up to as a father, which I sort of understand why then they changed it for the film, making Mr. Mushnick trying to blackmail Seymour and take the plant for himself before he's killed, as opposed to him just wanting Seymour to do the right thing and turn himself in. Oh well. Over in the Demon Barbara Fleet Streets category, your $800 clue is... this is Sweeney Todd's real name. What is Benjamin Barker? The Benjamin Barker backstory is another element that originated with Christopher Bond in his play in 1970. While the musical is an adaptation of the play, both evenings of theater are quite different. Stephen Sondheim once said even though it's the same play, it was essentially charming over there because they don't take Sweeney Todd seriously. Our production was larger in scope, he said. Hal Prince gave it an epic sense, a sense that this was a man of some size instead of just a nutcase. Looking at a more artistic horror-ish show, your $800 clue is... this musical, with a score by Maury Yeston, tells the tale of the Grim Reaper himself taking some time off in Italy where he falls in love with an engaged woman. What is Death Takes a Holiday? The Haunting musical is based on the 1920 Italian play of the same name. The play was adapted to film in 1932 with Frederick March as the weary personification of death. Also, the film Meet Joe Black, starring Brad Pitt, is an adaptation of Death Takes a Holiday as well. The musical opened off-Broadway at Roundabout Theatre Company's Laura Pell's Theatre, starring the wonderful Rebecca Luker, Max von Essen, Matt Kavanaugh, Alexandra Socha, and a host of other theatrical luminaries. And now, my fiendish friends, we've reached the main event, the big show. It's the $1,000 round. Cue that very dramatic music. Good luck, players. You'll need it. Our last encounter with a ghost gives us the $1,000 clue. This 1989 off-Broadway jukebox musical finds 4 deceased members of a tight harmony guy group coming back from the afterlife for one more concert. What is Forever Plaid? Mirroring popular guy groups in the 1950s like the Four Freshmen and the Lettermen, this show focuses on the Plaids, a guy group whose members are Sparky, Jinx, Frankie, and Smudge. The group was on their way to their first gig at the Airport Hilton when they collided with a bus full of Catholic schoolgirls on their way to see the Beatles perform on the Ed Sullivan Show. The girls were all fine, but the Plaids all died instantly. But they get one more chance at glory with the Ghostly concert, which includes songs like 3 Coins in the Fountain, Heart and Soul, and Love is a Many Splendored Thing.
And now, for the first time on this or any other planet, Forever Plaid.
Three coins in the fountain, each one seeking happiness. thrown by 3 hopeful lovers. Which one will the fountain bless?
The $1,000 clue for the Devil Made Me Do It category is: this musical, with a score by Randy Newman about God and the devil fighting over the soul of the title character, started life as a concept album before playing regionally in 1995. What is Faust? The Randy Newman musical is an updated retelling of the famous legend about the spiritual fight over a man's soul, with Henry Faust now being a student at the University of Notre Dame. Faust the musical had a short run at the La Jolla Playhouse in California in 1995. Script revisions for a Chicago production in 1996 were made by overproduced playwright David Mamet, but the show just never took off. Encores here in New York did a concert version of the piece in 2014, starring Tony Vincent, Michael Cerveris, and Randy Newman himself as Lucifer. Let's squeeze one more drop from the Bloodsuckers category with the $1,000 clue. This bloody off-Broadway musical is based off a famous headliner from the tabloid magazine The National Enquirer. What is Bat Boy? Bat Boy the musical opened off-Broadway in 2001, starring Carrie Butler and Devin May in the title role. The excellent score for Bat Boy is by Lawrence O'Keefe, who would later co-write the scores for Legally Blonde and Heathers the musical. Bat Boy is at times hilarious, terrifying, and even moving. I do indeed have a full breakdown video of the musical Bat Boy that you can watch after this. I'll be sure to put that video on the screen at the end of this one. It's a great Halloween watch. One last visit to Fleet Street and Sweeney Todd brings us the $1,000 clue. To keep her hidden, Judge Turpin has the sweet Joanna confined to an insane asylum run by this man. Who is Jonas Fogg is the correct answer. Fogg is the corrupt owner of the asylum who's in cahoots with Judge Turpin to lock his ward Joanna away. Fogg sells the hair of his inmates to wig makers, which is how Anthony, the young sailor in love with Joanna, infiltrates the sanitarium by posing as a wig maker. It does not end well for Jonas Fogg, let's just say. And the last clue standing, the $1,000 clue in the horror show category is: a musical version of the cult black comedy film from 1982 of the same name sees the prudish Paul and Mary Bland turn to a life of murder, grave robbing, and ultimately cannibalism. The stage version played off-Broadway in 1992. What is Eating Raoul? I promise you, most people probably didn't get this one, but the ones who did are screaming at their TVs right now because I mentioned this musical. It's one of those truly cult musicals. The film Eating Raoul came out in 1982. It's about a young couple, the Blands, a prudish husband and wife who live in a seedy building. When a drunken intruder is killed by Mr. Bland, they dispose of the body after looting it. After the situation presents itself again, the couple get into the business of offing rich perverts and taking their belongings. Money, cars, everything. When a devious locksmith named Raoul shows up and discovers what's going on, things take a turn, and as you may gather from the title, it gets pretty dark. Let's just leave it at that. The musical version opened 10 years after the film in 1992. And with that, we've reached the final Jeopardy round. I hope you all aren't sick to death of this Halloween-themed episode. At least I haven't done anything super cheesy like random jump scares or something. I mean, that would be just crazy. Did I get you? Yeah, I got some of you. All right, tally up your scores and decide how brave you feel in the category Which Witch is Which? Looking at some very spellbinding characters in shows. Okay, has everyone made their wagers? Freddie? Jason? Michael Riedel? Okay, here is your final clue. In The Wiz, the Wicked Witch of the West, Eveline, is the only bad witch in town after Dorothy killed her sister, the Wicked Witch of the East, named this. Who Who is Eva Mean? In The Wiz, Eva Mean was the Wicked Witch who ruled over the Munchkins, and she was crushed by Dorothy's house after the tornado, just as in the original source material. For the recent revival of The Wiz, they actually featured a Munchkin in the show selling these t-shirts spray painted with R.I.P. Eva Mean, like many memorial tees you might see, or at least used to see. But they actually sold these shirts at the merch booth too. Brilliant. And that's this week's game! Was it a spooktacular success, or were you bad to the bone? Be sure to let me know in the comments and tell me what your favorite Halloweenish musicals are. There's plenty I didn't have a chance to get to, but you know, there's always next year, right? I haven't forgotten about that really super cool prop I want to share with you guys. But first, I just want to say what's super frightening is how much I love my patrons over on Patreon. Transitions. But seriously, I appreciate each and every one of you more than you can possibly know. Okay, so here's the prop. Now, you guys know I love fake musicals. If you've been watching for a while, you know I love fake musicals. And I had an opportunity to buy this prop from Death Becomes Her. This is one of the actual Songbird the Musical props from the opening. Madeline Ashton in Songbird. It's not a full playbill. It's just the cover, nothing on the inside. And in the back, it's got these quotes, which are actually from like, I don't know, a history book. I'm not really sure. But look at that. Certificate of authenticity and everything. Madeline Ashton, Songbird. Death Becomes Her now is a huge musical on Broadway. I haven't seen it yet. I haven't looked into it. I don't know if they do anything from Songbird or anything, but I just think that's one of the coolest Broadway-related props from a movie that I've ever encountered. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Anyways, I hope you guys thought that was at least a little interesting. You guys that stick around to the end are my absolute favorites. You can follow me on the literal hellscape known as X, or on Instagram at @BWayGhostlight. But let me just say, seriously, each and every one of you that are subscribed and watch each week, thank you so much. I hope you have an amazing Halloween night filled with tricks, treats, and